Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. I hope you guys are doing well, and for this video, I am going to show you guys a little bit from a trip that I took out to Western Massachusetts for Indigenous Peoples Day. Now, some of you might know that as Columbus Day as well, but recently it's become a little bit more PC to say Indigenous Peoples Day because Columbus was kind of a savage. But so I wanted to kind of give this video a little bit of an intro, so I'm not just kind of plopping you in this random spot and asking you to kind of just get your bearings right away. So I want to talk a little bit about the places in Western Massachusetts that I had visited. So for this trip, you'll hear me to say Western Massachusetts and Berkshires kind of interchangeably. And that's because both kind of go in the same vein. The Berkshires are the sub-range, that mountain range in Western Massachusetts that we'll be visiting. And the Berkshires are actually part of the larger Appalachian Mountain Range, which stretches all the way from Maine down to Georgia. So it's a pretty long mountain range. It's one of the oldest mountain ranges in the world, actually currently standing. And a lot of people, when they visit Massachusetts, will think of only one part of Massachusetts to visit. There's a road that separates the state kind of straight down the middle, called 495. That's a highway. And when people think of Massachusetts, they typically think of 495 and east of 495. That's where I'm from. And that is where a lot of the attractions are, like Boston and everything to do kind of around the city. However, Western Massachusetts kind of becomes an afterthought, and people don't really talk much about it unless it's during the fall, when the leaves come out. And so we're going to be going out there and kind of exploring out there a little bit. And during the trip, myself and my family went to a few different locations. Primarily the footage that you'll see are from the towns of Shelburne Falls as well as Lee. And there's also some stops at some places in Pittsfield and Great Barrington. And these are towns that are really small town America. If you go out there, you'll get a completely different feel from the rest of Massachusetts. The eastern part of Massachusetts is very industrialized. The western part of Massachusetts feels like you're in like the foothills of West Virginia or backwoods Virginia. It's a really different vibe, but it was really nice. And I have this kind of map here that we picked up, and it's upside down. That's upside down as well. And this kind of gives you an overview of the towns of Western Massachusetts, the ones near the New York border specifically. And the towns that we went to, Shelburne Falls is a bit east of here, but a lot of the towns that we went to, Pittsfield is down here. And then on the other side, this is mostly where we were. The towns of Lenox, Lee, which is actually where we ended up staying, Stockbridge, West Stockbridge, Great Barrington. Those were kind of the areas that we hung around, and it was was so different, but it was a really nice different. So I'm going to kind of wrap this up here and get to the clips that I got, and I'll show you around a little bit. All right. Now our first stop on this trip is Shelburne Falls, and what you're actually seeing right now is the town of Buckland, and across the bridge is Shelburne Falls. Sleepy little town tucked right at the start of the Berkshires, and our first stop in this town is the Bridge of Flowers, which is a local, almost garden that's been constructed on one of the old bridges in town. And here you can see all kinds of different plants. You can see the sides of the river here that run through the town, and just a little look at the surrounding valley. Here's a look at a tree that I thought looked pretty cool. And way at the top of this hill here, you can see somebody decided to build their house. That's crazy. And here we have one of the many mosaics you can find throughout the city of Shelburne Falls. This one is dedicated to the local Mohawk Native American tribe, who have a trail named after them in the area. And here are the falls. Now the falls are actually constructed near a dam, well, they're on a dam. So they're not as maybe dramatic as they would be if there was no dam, but it was still pretty cool. You can see it off in the distance there. As I said in previous videos, we've had a lot of rain this year, so this is the highest I think I've ever seen the falls, and the most turbulent falls I've ever seen here. As you can see, the water's really spilling out of that spill point there in the dam, and you can see a lot of the underlying rock features as well, and a little bit more of a gentle fall over here. Here's a closer look at the falls, and as you can see, it's really roaring, and it goes kind of down into that roaring river down there that goes down into the valley. And people actually had some apartments overlooking the spill point, which I thought was crazy. Now here you can have some people dancing here. I looked this up, and apparently this is a Morris dance, which is a traditional English folk dance. And these guys are all over the city, which I thought was pretty cool. And here we're just kind of walking back up the falls, back into the city a little bit, and we're going to explore some of the local shops that are in the town of Shelburne Falls. Here's kind of a knick-knack store. I wasn't really interested in any of the knickknacks that they had there, but it was a cool environment on the inside, and what I really liked was the tin ceiling. That's so old school, and you just don't see that anymore, which was really cool. Here's a bookstore, and I will tell you, I loved this bookstore. They were all used books, and the woman in there was, oh gosh, she was so nice. One of the nicest women that I've met in quite some time. And as you can see, it has kind of this cozy old school feel to it, and you look out and you're right at the river. So this is the town of Lee, and to be honest, not a whole lot goes on in Lee. Here's the main strip, and it's kind of surrounded by this cut through with this main road, and there's a park here, and you can see a classic New England church. But yeah, Lee, very quiet town. If you were in it for the nightlife, I wouldn't recommend it, but it is a picturesque town. Now here we go along on the next day. This is in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, which is actually quite a big city in the western part of the state, if you want to call it that. And this place was a local hiking trail that we decided to check out. It's called Canoe Meadows, and it was the third ranked hiking trail in the Pittsfield area. As you can see, on the day it was a little bit cloudy, but it was still a really nice, crisp fall morning. Great time to take a walk. And as you can see here, There's a little bit of a gravel trail that eventually leads to a bridge, and there's a nice overlook of the pond to the left. And what was really nice about this place is it wasn't too long of a trek. It was about a 50-minute walk, and it was really easy terrain, which was nice. And it was a really different environment than I'm used to. I mean, it was still woods and everything, but you can see the rolling hills in the distance of the Berkshires. You could see some water, and you have a little bit of forest with some kind of wetland growth around here. It was quite nice for a morning walk. Now out here, there is a significant amount of local wildlife, deer, moose, which I hope I never come face to face with a moose. Those things are massive. And also black bears, which are the largest carnivore in Massachusetts. Now, on my trip here, I did not bring any bear spray, so that may or may not have been a smart decision, or a not smart decision, however way you want to look at it. But thankfully, I didn't run into any over here. The scariest thing that I ran into was this 5-year-old kid who was rustling around in a wild raspberry bush wanting me to try some raspberries. Speaking of that, though, something that was a real culture shock or a pleasant surprise coming out here was just how friendly everybody was. In the eastern part of the state, Massachusetts is not well known for its hospitality. A lot of first-timers to Massachusetts can think that the locals are a bit rude, maybe a bit abrasive, and not super welcoming, but coming out here was such a different vibe. I think everybody on the trail here that we ran into said hello, they were smiling. Everybody in the towns that we ran across were so warm and, well, just welcoming. Just you wanted to talk to them, you wanted to be there. And that was a huge, huge pleasant surprise. Did not expect that coming out here. Totally different. It was not like Massachusetts whatsoever. It reminded me of being back down in rural West Virginia. Now we have a little bit left to go on this trail, and the trail was interesting. It was kind of went from gravel to grass, and now a combination of dirt and grass. It basically looked like somebody took a big industrial mower and just went to town, which was actually pretty good because it gave you a nice wide trail to walk on. Here we're kind of coming out into this little clearing. There's a little bit of a sign to your left that tells you about the different bird species that you can find, as well as why they do controlled burns here, which was very interesting to read. I read it on the way back. But as you could see during this time, the sun was kind of starting to come out a little bit. The clouds were slowly making their way out of the picture, although it's still a bit cloudy here, but you'll see it at some point. And one thing I loved on these routes were just the fallen leaves on the ground. And the foliage wasn't spectacular coming out here. A lot of the foliage this year, as the fall has progressed, has actually gone from kind of an initial burst of color to eventually just the leaves going brown and falling on the ground. But just the smell of the leaves through the forest just was really reminiscent of fall, and you can see a little bit towards the right here. And as we're going down here, we're about to kind of come to a stop towards the end and head our way back. So this was again a very nice walk, something that I would absolutely recommend and would do again. Um, Maybe if I wasn't with family, I might choose a little bit more of a challenging trail for myself, but um, this was a nice low-key start to the morning. So yeah, I'm just gonna go a little bit further and then turn around. As we were leaving Canoe Meadows, the sun decided to come out, as I mentioned a little earlier, so I wanted to get a shot of that before we took off for Great Barrington. So here we are taking the trip out to Great Barrington, and for once on my trips, I did not have to drive, so I could actually take some video out the side of the window on the way there. And it was just a bunch of sloping hills and just endless trees and some open fields as well, which was so nice to just look at and not have to focus on the road too much. Over here, something that we really wanted to do before we left was to go find an apple orchard, and we found one here in Great Barrington, and it completely overlooked a hill in the background there, which was great. And this was just tucked away in a little space. You can see the apple trees near the barn at the top of the screen there. And we're just walking through a bunch of plants that they were selling there for landscaping. And here you can see some pumpkins in the distance. You can see that hill again in the distance. At this point, there were barely any clouds in the sky, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful day, and the scenery was excellent. My dad on the way here really wanted to get a pumpkin, and he really wanted to get some apples, so as soon as he saw a place to do that, he pulled right over. And this place was kind of in the middle of nowhere, to be honest, but it was really picturesque. Here you can find some gourds and some white pumpkins, which you don't see too often. Some typical fall stuff that you would get here. And one thing that I was so happy that they had was hot apple cider. I've been talking for weeks, really months, about hot apple cider to everyone around me, and gosh, if you never had it before, it's so good. I would highly recommend it. But after going to the apple orchard, we did unfortunately have to go home, which none of us wanted to do. It was such a nice trip, 2 days out in western Massachusetts. I'm sure it could have stayed for at least a week, maybe more. It was that nice. And I hope to get back there again in the spring. But yeah, that is going to mark the end of this little travel journey. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'm hoping to have some more things that I got from the trip kind of as future videos, and we're going to start getting kind of away from the United States for travel and start to branch out more into North America, which I hope you guys will enjoy. Alright guys, thank you again for all the support so far, and again, I hope you guys are doing well. Take care.